Hey guys, welcome back to Laurence McKenna on LFC channel, where, first of all, congratulations to Crystal Palace. I think a lot of people are very happy that Crystal Palace won this, and as a Liverpool fan, honestly, I can't really hold it against them, so congratulations to them. On the other side of it, what's with the crazy reaction, guys? What's with the extended pre-season shield that we would have been fine with if we won, but would have called it just getting in the habit of winning, and I understand all this, but we'd also have said, well, it's not really the big thing we want at the end of the season. But instead, lots of people are looking for in-depth tactical analysis and narrative where I don't believe there is as much as they're saying. And there are some very good points in there. So I'm going to go through some of your comments and kind of feedback that you had on the team later. But first of all, let's talk about some of the key points that I noticed from actually being at the game. A big one for me was how to start the game, and I understand that we've lost Diogo Jota in a tragic accident, and rest in peace to both him and his brother, and obviously our thoughts are still with his family, and they will be, and like they said, forever 20, so they will be with them forever. But I think a real aspect for me is this season is obviously immediately preceding that. I think even Arne Slot pointed out, it was 5 or 6 weeks ago now, and it still feels pretty fresh to a lot of these players. Now, you might be saying, oh, well, I don't want to make excuses in the game. No, I'm not trying to make excuses in the game. But I do want to talk about the way that fans approach things this season and how they are going to try and sometimes get under our skin, sometimes do things which put us off or whatever it is. And when I was in the stadium, the minute silence for a majority of those 82,000 people was beautifully observed, especially from the Liverpool side, obviously. And there are a lot of Palace fans who I think equally had that respect. You could see the whole stadium rise. You could see there are a lot of people actually getting ready for that minute's applause, which I often think is a better thing to do, just in terms of drowning out anyone who does decide they want to do something that feels in bad taste. But also, because a lot of people think, hey, I want to pay tribute. I don't want to have this solemn moment. I want to have a moment of celebration. And that's fair enough. But I think, and a lot of the media and those kind of people have done a very good job of basically saying, oh, well, it's just a couple of fans. And, when they're late in from the concourse, those kind of things. I'll admit, when there is a minute's silence and you walk in from the concourse, especially in Wembley, it can be it's probably a little bit strange. To me, that didn't sound like someone who just walked in on a minute's silence and just started cheering. That sounded like someone who was trying to disrupt it, and it sounded like there were people shouting individually. So I'm just going to call it as I heard it, and it annoyed me at the time. I thought it was in very bad taste, and who am I to virtue signal or whatever? But if I'm the Palace fans, I'm having a word with that guy, and you'll know who he is, or you'll know who they are. It sounded like a man, and in the end, it kind of marred a nice opening moment. Not only for Liverpool, but also for Crystal Palace. But I don't think that's going to in any way affect the memory of Diogo Jota. And again, rest in peace. There might be a few people who feel defensive of their football club at this point. I'm calling it as I heard it. And it wasn't someone just walking in off a concourse. It was someone coming in and shouting and deliberately trying to disrupt something. And I think we can try and paper over it or whatever. Ultimately, it seemed pretty obvious to me in the stadium what was going on. I know we're trying to obviously be respectful between the two clubs, and very often when you're in the losing position, obviously it's easy to be angry about these kind of things. I still think we need to call it as we hear it and as we see it. So ultimately for me, I think the Palace fans probably need to do some self-policing there. Yeah. Moving on from that, shifting tone a little bit. Hugo Ekitike is a good player. This was something that I think a lot of the comments acknowledged. This is something a lot of people are acknowledging. He was great with the hookup. There were times where I thought maybe we over-egged the pie a little bit, but actually that combination on the left looked pretty good to me. It looked really solid. And, I didn't expect him to come in and kind of hit the ground running. I expect him to come in and be good, but didn't expect him to come in and kind of be the player that got the man of the match. For me, he was one of the men of the match yesterday. And I felt he really showed what his influence can be, what a smart player he is, how he can be out on the left, how he can bin through the centre, how he can play off Wirtz, how Wirtz can play off him. There were times where I thought maybe on the edge of the box I would have liked to see him bring other players in, but that wasn't really an opportunity he got, so I can't really critique that. But I think that will be an opportunity we get, and ultimately I think he's actually quite a good weapon in unlocking a lot of defences that are going to sit a little bit deeper this season, because he's a player to play off. And Liverpool seem very into this one-touch stuff this season. That's very much an Arne Slot principle in the first place, of this fast-moving, quick-passing football. And I think, at times it felt a little bit stilted, at times it didn't quite work. But ultimately, you could see where the team were going with it, and it's still pre-season. We're still a week away, well, less than a week now, 5 days away from kicking off on Friday night against Bournemouth. And of course, you can get all the coverage of that here. I'm thinking about doing a live stream. Anyone want to hop in on that? I don't know. Let me know. But Hugo Ekitike, I think, is going to be a great asset to Liverpool. And I think what most people are forgetting this season is we've let go of Diaz, we've let go of Nunez. Obviously, the sad passing of Jota was there. Chiesa will be a player ultimately we'll let go. We've consolidated, as I've said, but I think in that consolidation, you have to realise when you are consolidating, there will be times where you are a little limited in what you can bring on. And ultimately, I don't think anyone on that pitch was able to play or, ready to play a full 90 just because of the fitness levels. And someone said it in my comments. It was a really good comment, actually. It stinks of an Asian pre-season. So, people coming back from Asia and having that time difference, that jet lag or whatever. And I think Liverpool did look a little bit just stilted at times, a little bit laboured, I guess is what I'd say. And I think a lot of people are critiquing that as like the be all and end all. This is 0.10 of, or 1.0 of Slot in this era. And, I give him time to be able to grow into that. On the other side of that, obviously with the Wirtz combination and Gakpo, some people saying Gakpo looked a little bit formulaic. I quite liked his contribution. I think there's not much he can do, or there is a lot he can do, but there isn't much he can do. If he's given the ball in certain positions, he's expected to run at players, expected to take them on, expected to give Kirkes the overlap. And most of the time he does that. And I know that some people say it's a bit predictable, but it's very effective. And I know football can be predictable. There's some things you just cannot stop. And I think when Liverpool get in full flow and when Liverpool begin to get that better understanding of these new 4 players in the team, we're probably going to see a slightly different version of that and probably variations on that. So I'm not particularly worried about that. On the other side, I think Salah has always had a great relationship with Trent. Weirdly, a lot of people are now talking about, well, can he get a good relationship with Frimpong? But ultimately, I think a lot of people are forgetting what a great relationship he worked up very early with Bradley. Now, Bradley looked fantastic on the overlap. A lot of people are speaking as if Trent had locked that position down in those last 2 seasons, and he really hadn't, guys. As good as he was, and, I think yesterday I'm wondering if there is a ball from Trent, or with all these long balls going forward, is there something there we can swing a ball through? And if you did have that, then, that would probably be a big asset for us. But ultimately, as well, it's about the player running onto it, and it's about where the ball is going to go, how the timely manner in which we play that ball. And I think, I don't mind really where Liverpool are at right now. I felt quite confident about the way that we saw them play, and really that if we finish, I know volume of shots might be a thing, but I think if we can up that volume and up that control, then I agree with Arne Slot. We were slightly more controlling. We did create more what I would consider to be clear-cut chances than those kind of half chances I felt we were creating last season, and that to me made me quite buoyant. The midfield balance is needed there. The midfield at the moment doesn't seem particularly balanced to me. Szoboszlai and Curtis Jones sitting. There wasn't really a holder yesterday, but it does worry me. I think McAllister's probably closest to the other holder. Endo also a bit of a holder in there, but Gravenberch is really that guy we want in there alongside Mac. But now that we've changed that midfield dynamic and the engine room and the creativity that we saw through it last season and the movement and the intensity, all those things that characterise an Arne Slot side, I've got to admit we are changing now to that facilitator. At times, not always, through Wirtz, through Salah. And when Salah isn't hitting, which he wasn't really yesterday, and then he ended up missing that penalty, it's tricky. I think we will solve that as McAllister comes back into the side, as we see Gravenberch kind of obviously return. And again, congratulations for having a young kid. I know what a great feeling that is. He's had a child now. Of course, they're young, they're days old. Centre-back balance also needed, and I think that's about that overall unit. A lot of people are talking about the transition through the midfield into the centre-backs. Liverpool almost want people to hit their centre-backs sometimes. They want them to get into that space and then we can harry them and kind of hurry them. I think ultimately for me, that comes down to the fact that we don't quite know what shape it is that Arne Slot's going for yet or where he wants to direct people. At the moment, they seem to want to direct people out wide and then them have to put speculative balls in or get isolated and then one back will win the ball back and counter, right? And I'm confident that will work in the long term. But at the moment, it's making us look similar to in the Klopp era when it was like, well, we play the odds. We're playing the odds now, guys. And ultimately, I do think we need another centre-back. I do think we'll bring in Mark Gray. I do think we'll bring in Isak. And then we'll see a more finished, first of all, with Gray challenging for a position at centre-back. And then up front, you'll see Isak, who's an elite striker. And, I know Ekitike is, and I know Gakpo is as well. But an elite striker of the ball and someone who's very dangerous, very worrying, and a very different style, actually, to Ekitike, despite the fact they take up similar areas. And then rotation is needed. This is my final point in this video. We need to rotate. First of all, at fullback, Bradley, Frimpong, Kirkes, Diaz, Robertson, and Tsimikas. Tsimikas will be off fairly soon, I think. But ultimately, we need to work on we need to work on that rotation, because people are talking about coasting yesterday. I think we coasted into trouble. I think we looked tired into trouble, and ultimately we couldn't get control of the game again because I don't think the fitness was there. I don't think the concentration was there, and that let us down in the end. And that ultimately, I think, let us down in penalties. Liverpool looked quite tired. Salah has now blazed a couple of balls over the bar. I do wonder if there's a question, not only in his mind, but also in the squad, as to who takes penalties. Could it be a better striker of the ball? Would it be Isak if he came in? Could it be someone else? I'd love to know who you guys think should take it. Maybe McAllister? I'm just wondering if there is a name there, especially as he's possibly going to be named vice-captain. And yeah, I'll talk about the calls after the game that Van Dijk had in the media and what Slot said as well. But I appreciate you guys watching the video, and those are my takeaways. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought. I'm going to be doing a comments about that video yesterday, the reaction to that match, kind of the reaction that we all had and what people's theories were, and reacting to a bit of that. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below, because I will be using yesterday's video and today's to kind of bring together all those opinions, the overall feeling right now. But I think at the moment we're in a better position than a lot of people are painting, and I'd love to know where you guys are at with it. Discord, obviously down there for free. Patreon, and of course there are memberships on this channel as well. Go take advantage of all three of those if you have that inclination. I'll see you guys again here real soon. Much love.